Hello everyone, welcome to our latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. I am your host, Darius Sethna. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day today, wherever you are, to listen to our latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Man, what a week it's been in the city of Cleveland. Obviously, the NFL draft has taken over the city. I was actually downtown yesterday for a little bit. It is jam-packed with Browns fans and NFL fans from all over the country. So that's definitely going to be a topic of discussion for today. Also going to keep you updated with the Cavs. They've been dealing with a lot of injury concerns, so we're going to tell you what's been going on with them. Also, of course, going to keep you intrigued with baseball. Indian season has been underway for a few weeks now. We're going to get you updated with all of that. We're also going to give you updates on both the Premier League and the MLS, some soccer highlights for you this week. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, welcome to another edition of the Cleveland Sports Show with your one and only host, Darius Sethna. Gentlemen, you are listening to the Cleveland Sports Show on NordoniaHills.News. I am your host, Darius Sethna. The Cleveland Sports Show starts now. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. I am your host, Darius Sethna. I'm going to have Logan Purcell join me in a little bit here, Nordonia freshman. We're going to talk obviously the NFL draft, but we'll also keep you updated with the Cavs and the Indians. Now, let's get you updated with your sports fact of the day. And today is May 1st, 2021. And we're going to go all the way back to 1891 for today's sports fact of the week. And today, on May 1st, on this day in 1891, legendary pitcher Cy Young wins the first game ever played at Cleveland's League Park. This was when the Cleveland baseball team was known as the Spiders. They were taking on their Ohio rival, the Cincinnati Redlegs. Cy Young and the Spiders got the win on May 1st, 1891 against Cincinnati. The final score, 12-3, and that was the first game Cy Young won at Cleveland's League Park. Now, we all know Cy Young, one of the best pitchers in baseball history. He holds MLB records for most career wins with 511, along with most career innings pitched, games started, and complete games. He also led the league in wins during 5 seasons and pitched 3 no-hitters, including a perfect game as well. And in 1937, Cy Young was elected into the National Baseball Hall of Fame. The total is 2,803 strikeouts to go along with an earned run average of 2.63. Cy Young, former Cleveland Spider, one of the best to ever play the game of baseball. That is certainly an awesome sports fact of the week for you right there. And now it's time for some soccer updates. And the Premier League is going strong for yet another weekend. Updated standings for you right now. Manchester City have a comfortable 13-point margin lead for first place over their in-city rival Manchester United. Manchester City, with 80 points on the year so far, they have 25 wins, 5 draws, 4 losses. Now, Manchester United comes in with 67 points, 19 wins, 10 draws, 4 losses. Leicester City, in third place in the Premier League, they have 19 wins, 6 draws, and 9 losses for a combined total of 63 points. And then Chelsea, they are in fourth place with 16 wins, 10 draws, 7 losses, total of 58 points on the season for them. And then West Ham comes in with 33 matches played thus far on the season, with 16 wins, 7 draws, 10 losses for a total of 55 points. Those are your top 5 in the Premier League for this week. Stats in the Premier League. Let's keep you updated with that. Harry Kane and Mohamed Salah, the only two players in the league still with 20 or more goals. Harry Kane, the leader in goals scored this year in the Premier League so far. 21 goals on the season for him, but Mohamed Salah right there on his tail with 20 goals himself. Bruno Fernandes comes in at third place, the Manchester United player, with 16 goals on the season thus far. Son Heung-min comes in at fourth place. Harry Kane's Tottenham Hotspur teammate himself has collected 15 goals on the season thus far. Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Patrick Bamford tie for fifth place in goals scored, each with 14 goals on the season. Harry Kane also still leads the league in assists so far. Kane with 13 assists on the season. Bruno Fernandes and Kevin De Bruyne tie for second place on the assist list. Jack Grealish and then Son Heung-min follow their footsteps. Now, upcoming matches in the Premier League, let's get you updated with that real quick here. Now, yesterday we had one game. Southampton and Leicester City actually tied one another. 1-1 the final score, and Southampton actually had to play down a man due to a red card that was awarded to Jannik Vestergaard in the 10th minute of the game. So for the majority of this game, Southampton was playing down one player, but they still managed to gain a point and tie with one of the top seeds in the league, Leicester City. Now, in terms of this weekend, we already had a game that has been complete. Manchester City defeated Crystal Palace earlier today. Final score of that game, 2-0. So Manchester City still retain, obviously, their first place crown in the Premier League thus far. Right now, it is halftime between Brighton and Leeds United. Brighton leading that one 1-0. Some more games in the Premier League today include Chelsea taking on Fulham, Everton going up against Aston Villa, and then Newcastle will be going up against Arsenal. That will be tomorrow at 9 a.m. And after that Newcastle-Arsenal game tomorrow, there will be two more games on Sunday. Manchester United going up against Liverpool, and then Tottenham Hotspur going up against Sheffield United. And on Monday, there are a couple of games as well to conclude the weekend festivities of soccer. West Brom will be taking on the Wolves Monday at 1 p.m., and then Burnley will be going up against West Ham Monday as well. That game will kick off at 3:15 p.m. Now, let's stay on the soccer side of things, but let's talk about the MLS and the Columbus Crew. Now, Columbus Crew's first regular season game, as I mentioned, that tie against Philadelphia. This past Wednesday, last week I was talking about that CONCACAF Champions League, the quarterfinal leg. One of two, Columbus were taking on Monterrey, and Columbus and Monterrey tie 2-2. Let's get you more who scored the goals in that game. Now, for the Crew, Milton Valenzuela and Lucas Zelarayan scored for the Columbus Crew, but they give up a 2-1 lead in added time. Jose Alvaro of Monterrey scored in added time to tie the game up. So right now, this quarterfinal, this first leg is tied 2-2. Now, the way this works is that Columbus and Monterrey will play again this Wednesday, May 5th. That game will be in Monterrey, in Mexico. Now, this aggregate score is 2-2 because Columbus and Monterrey tied 2-2 this past Wednesday, April 28th. So basically, whoever scores more goals in this second match is going to win. The series. Now, for example, if Columbus was up 2-1, if they won the match this past Wednesday 2-1, and they faced off against Monterrey, that aggregate score would be 2-1. However, if Monterrey win 2-1, they would still lose the series. So if Monterrey win that second game still 2-1, they would still lose the series because the aggregate score, the total goals scored in each of the two games, Columbus would still be on top because they would have 3 total goals, while Monterrey would only have those two goals. Now, I may have messed up the math a little bit there. I may have said 2-1. If Columbus was up 2-0, if they won that game 2-0, then it would be that 3-2 aggregate score overall. Now, upcoming schedule for the Columbus Crew, they actually have a road game today. This will be a regular season game against Montreal. It'll be today at 3 p.m. And as I mentioned, the second round of the CONCACAF Champions League quarterfinal. It'll be like 2 of 2. Monterrey going up against the Crew. That'll be Wednesday, May 5th at 8 p.m. That'll then conclude the Crew's tournament participation in the CONCACAF Champions League. We'll see what happens with them in that tournament going forward. But Saturday, May 8th is when the regular season resumes for Columbus. They will host DC United on Saturday, May 8th, and then on Wednesday, May 12th, they will be in Toronto to take on Toronto FC. Standings right now in the MLS, in terms of the Crew's sake, nothing spectacular going on right now. Crew in 9th place, but don't worry about that. It's only because of that tie they had with Philadelphia. So it's still plenty of games to be played for the Crew, so certainly nothing to worry about. And hey, 1 point is certainly better than no points and a loss. And now joining me for our next portion of the show, we're going to talk about some Cavs, some NBA basketball here. I'm welcoming Logan Purcell, who is back with us this week. Logan, how have you been doing? It's been a great week in Cleveland sports, so I'm sure you definitely must be pumped up for this podcast episode.
Oh yeah, it's been a great week. It's been a fun-filled week for every sport. A lot of baseball and a great NFL draft recently. So
yeah, and we're definitely going to get into the NFL draft. But first, Logan, let's talk a little bit about the Cleveland Cavaliers, because it has certainly been a rough week for the Cavs. The last time the Cavs won a basketball game, Logan, was last Wednesday, April 24th. Since then, they have lost 5 games in a row, and all of these games that they've lost have been against sub-500 teams. You're talking about the Hornets, the Wizards, the Raptors, and the Magic. The Cavs played the Wizards twice within the span of these last couple of weeks and lost both of them. Especially last night was one of the worst second-half performances of the entire season for the Cavs. They were outscored 33-16 in the third quarter alone against the Washington Wizards, Logan. Now, we've all heard about the Wizards. They've been going on this winning streak. You know, they can definitely get into that play-in round. As of right now, they're 29-34, so they're definitely, on the right track of getting, at least having a chance to get into the playoffs. But here's what surprised me, Logan. Bradley Beal was the highest scorer for the Wizards, only 19 points. No one on the Wizards cracked even 20, Logan, and the Cavs still managed to get blown out. Now, Darius Garland left this game with an ankle injury that really did not look comfortable at all in that third quarter, and it really left Colin Sexton to do the majority of the work. He had 22 points in 32 minutes, but again, it's once again that inconsistency, Logan. You're looking at Kevin Love, 22 minutes, 0 points. Jared Allen, 13 points in 26 minutes. I really think he can do way better than that. Chetty Osman was the second leading scorer for the Cavs, 14 points in 19 minutes. This is just, to me, this was just subpar Cavalier basketball. This is not what I was expecting, especially against, let's be honest, Logan, I'm not, I know that Westbrook and Beal are very elite scorers, but when you look at the rest of this Washington Wizards team, come on, I think the Cavs can compete with that, and the fact that they get blown out in the third quarter, that's really surprising to me. So, your thoughts specifically on this game last night, Logan?
I think this game perfectly portrayed how the Cavs season has gone to this point. It's been, honestly, a story of inconsistency. They haven't been able to score the basketball consistently. Besides, you look at Colin Sexton, obviously, has had a tremendous season. Darius Garland has been there, but, it's just been, honestly, just back and forth. Jared Allen has been inconsistent and hurt. Yeah. It's been that kind of story to me, and I think that the fact that Bradley Beal was the highest scorer with only 19 points, shooting 8 of 24, mind you.
Yeah.
Not exactly the best of field goal percentage. I think that the Cavs need to do better, and they got to find a way to pick it up offensively.
How do you feel, Logan? Let's talk about the Wizards here for a little bit because they've been on a nice winning streak. They did lose one game in the middle of that streak, but they've won the majority of their games in about a week or so. So, how do you feel about the Wizards' playoff chances and what they can do if they do get into the playoffs? Because you have in that elite backcourt of Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal, they finally look like they're learning how to be they're learning how to play with one another. And then, that supporting cast, it is a decent supporting cast. So what do you think the ceiling should be for the Washington Wizards if they can get into the NBA playoffs?
Well, one of the biggest things that I will say, it kind of works against the Wizards, is the fact that we've seen teams built like the Wizards go to the playoffs. And, let's look at it like this. That's how LeBronto was created, for anybody that knows about LeBron against Toronto. And this team is very, I hate to say it, but completely one-dimensional. Well, you already mentioned it when you were talking about the Cavs last night, and Westbrook and Beal, and that's about it. I mean, Hachimura is there again. Daniel Gafford's an up-and-coming guy who can play. But honestly, it seems like a very similar build to that Raptors team. And in the playoffs, come playoff time, two very solid scorers is not enough. You can't work with that. Now, don't get me wrong. Come playoff time, I think there's a chance that they can make a move, but they've got to figure out some different sort of, consistent ways to score the basketball.
Yeah, to me, I don't see the Wizards getting out of the first round because if you think about it, if they get that 8th seed, they're going to have to go up against a Brooklyn or a Philadelphia most likely, and I see both of those teams easily handling their business against the Wizards. Now, let's get back into the Cavs here, Logan. You were mentioning LeBronto, the Raptors. The Cavs did play the Raptors this past week, lost by 16, 112 to 96. This was also a game where the Cavs just let it slip away. Chetty Osman only 6 points in this game. Leading scorer was Isaac Okoro, actually. 20 points in 32 minutes for Okoro. Let's talk about this game for a little bit, Logan. Cavs against the Raptors. This was a competitive game, but once again, Cavs let it slip away in that third quarter. So what's going on in this third quarter, Logan? Because it seems like consistently, and this is throughout the entire season, that the Cavs are always struggling to have a competitive third quarter. So what's been the problem going on in this third quarter?
I think that we talked about this a few months ago when we were talking about the Cavs' inconsistencies and whose fault that really was, and I think that has to go on the back of J.D. Bickerstaff. And I think the fact that they're coming in flat is a huge factor in just not preparing for the game.
Yeah.
Not preparing to come into the second half, and I think that's a huge reason why they're coming out flat.
How do you feel about Kevin Love and the kind of mental lapse he had this week against Toronto?
I think that Kevin Love's mental lapse is just a matter of him not really being there. I think that it's a matter of the fact that he hasn't played a lot recently.
Yeah.
And it gives me a little bit of concern. When it comes, I think we should have moved Kevin Love forever ago. We've talked about that numerous times.
Yes.
But I think it's time for him to go, even though he's been playing consistent and relatively well on the floor. I just think it's time for him to go.
Yeah, and it's also time for the Cavaliers to buckle up because they have a rough schedule coming up. They do have 3 more home games left before a trip to Dallas to take on the Mavericks. But they're playing these are all playoff teams that they're going to be playing for the majority of the rest of their season. They're playing the Heat tonight at 8 p.m. They're going to play the Suns this upcoming Tuesday, May 4th. They're playing the Trailblazers the next night on Wednesday, May 5th. Then they have 2 games against the Mavericks back-to-back. They're playing the Pacers, the Celtics, the Wizards. They'll see the Wizards again in D.C., and then they'll be playing the Nets for their final game of the season. So these are, this is going to be a tough schedule for the Cavs to finish out their season. As I mentioned, the first part of that, the remainder of that schedule will be tonight against the Miami Heat at 8 p.m. So, Logan, what do you want to see from the Cavs? They are obviously... they have been plagued, and I really mean plagued with that injury bug. Some of the injuries, include and a decent amount of concussions as well, Logan. Larry Nance Jr. Has fractured his thumb. Matthew Dellavedova is out once again with a concussion. Isaiah Hartenstein has been out with a concussion. Dylan Windler most likely will miss the rest of the season with knee surgery. Torian Prince will be having ankle surgery, and Lamar Stevens also has a concussion. So, what with this shorthanded roster, and possibly now with Darius Garland out for the next few games, Logan, who needs specifically, which players do you think need to step up, especially against these quality playoff opponents the Cavs are going to be facing?
Well, after you mentioned the injury bug and the amount of guys that are going to be out for Cleveland tonight, I think two names that come to mind for me is Jared Allen. Assuming he does play tonight, I think that he needs to perform. He has a lot to prove. He's been one of the most inconsistent guys for the Cavs, and I think that the trade they made with Brooklyn, it's got to come to fruition that he's going to be worth the move. And then the other name that comes to mind is Kevin Love. We already talked about the mental lapse, and I know I'm talking about him having to go and how he's played inconsistently but well enough. I think that to be one of those guys that needs to get a move, I think he's got to be able to play well so that there's some sort of sentimental value in trading him.
Yeah, and I'm going to be very interested to see how the Cavs, what they do, and specifically in that third quarter. I don't care if the first half is competitive. I want to see at the end of 3 quarters if the game is still in the balance. Because, you know what, I don't want to see any more garbage time in the fourth quarter. I'm honestly rather sick of seeing garbage time in the fourth quarter. The only game that didn't happen was this past Wednesday when the Magic were in town to play the Cavs. This game was pretty much all but over, but then the Cavs stormed back in the fourth quarter this past Wednesday, scored 43 points alone in the fourth quarter. So it's not like the Cavs don't have it in them, and I definitely think if they can put a performance like that in the third quarter, it will be a much more competitive game. But Logan, let's talk about the overall standings in the NBA. So Brooklyn right now, they are officially the first seed in the Eastern Conference, followed by the Philadelphia 76ers. Philly, though, is only a half a game back behind Brooklyn for that first seed. The Milwaukee Bucks, 39-24. And how about this, Logan? The Knicks are the fourth seed in the Eastern Conference at 35-28. The Celtics, Logan, have been playing better basketball. They actually had a huge comeback win last night against the San Antonio Spurs, and they've been playing a little better overall. But I'm still concerned about those Celtics. So let's jump into that. Right now the Celtics are 34-30. They've won their last 2 games. They're 6-4 in their last 10, so not great, but could be worse. I'm honestly very nervous, Logan, about the fact that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have so much pressure on them offensively. I really feel like it's just too much of a burden for them. Not that they can't handle it, but in order to win in this competitive Eastern Conference, it has to be more than just those 2 guys. And to me, from what I'm seeing, Evan Fournier hasn't really lived up to that expectation that I was hoping he would have. So in your analysis of the Celtics, because I know you're a big Jason Tatum fan, how would you rate this team going into a playoff picture? Because right now they wouldn't be in the playoff seeding games. They would have an official playoff spot because they're the 6th seed. But I'm still nervous because of right now, if the playoffs were to start today, they'd be playing the Bucks in the first round. And I don't think that is a series that would go well. So your thoughts on the Celtics and kind of the offensive pressures that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have to endure?
Well, I know when I mentioned talking about the Wizards and how that you can't play playoff basketball with 2 scorers like Westbrook and Beal just having the entire load. You can make the same argument with the Boston Celtics, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, but the only counter argument you could even bring up is the fact that they've got Kemba Walker, and despite the fact that he hasn't played all that great this year, he's a guy that could give you 30 on any given night.
Right.
Marcus Smart is one of the best. He's a dog. I mean, he's one of the best defending guards in the NBA. And you just got guys across the board. Like you talked about Evan Fournier, how he has lived up to the hype, and I would have to agree. But again, he's also one of those guys that can give you 20 on any given night. So this team, it worries me. I think Tatum has improved his level of play to a level that we haven't seen from him in a long time.
Yeah.
You mentioned the comeback win, but I think you forgot to mention that he had 60.
Yeah,
that's
it ties. Yeah, he tied Larry. That was tying Larry Bird's single game record last night. That was an amazing comeback win by the Celtics.
And he just simply outworked everybody on the floor. He hit his shots and he got his work done. So it does worry me the fact that there are only two guys that truly go to work offensively for that team. But like I said, they're a lot deeper than a lot of these teams across the board. A lot of these top 4 or 5 teams are very top heavy. So not that Boston isn't the same, but I think Boston can run 8 guys deep.
Well, the Nets are deep too. I think, and the Nets and Sixers to me are deep as well, Logan. You've got quality players coming off the bench, especially with the Sixers. They've got guys like Shake Milton. If I'm not mistaken, I think Matisse Thybulle comes off the bench. You have Tyrese Maxey, who I think has been. I think he's been a great player out of Kentucky. So the Sixers, Dwight Howard off the bench as well. So I think the Sixers definitely have some depth, as well as the Bucks. You look at guys like Dante DiVincenzo coming off the bench. Antetokounmpo, Giannis's brother Thanasis Antetokounmpo. I think they have a solid bench as well. So how do you think that the Celtics bench matches up with those benches?
When it comes to the Sixers, I don't think that there's any team in the Eastern Conference from the bench and a depth standpoint that really matches up against them. But then again, if you look at the numbers and the team, it hasn't changed all that much in the past couple of years. It really has been the same really deep Sixers team, but they haven't gotten very far. They haven't been able to work in the playoffs. I think that the Bucks, again, it's a good argument, but I just think the Boston Celtics bench is way better. I think I will take, Marcus Smart or Evan Fournier over Dante DiVincenzo.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So, to me, I think it matches up. I like the matchup. And I think from the starter standpoint, I would probably take Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and that whole starting group over the Bucks starting group any day of the week. I just think it's a matter of how they haven't performed this year.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm not going to discredit them, though, because at the end of the day, we've seen 4 or 5 seeds go into the playoffs and get to the finals.
Yeah.
So I think that it's a very good chance that this team, despite the lack of consistency from the starters, can still go pretty far in the playoffs.
Yeah, and you were talking about 4th, 5th seed that can make the finals. Look at the Miami Heat last year. They were a 6th seed, and they went all the way to the NBA Finals. So you just never know. Now let's talk about the Western Conference, Logan. And the Phoenix Suns have taken first place in the conference. They are 45-18, Logan. Now I expected the Suns to be good. I didn't expect them to be this good. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games. Jazz, they have the same record as the Jazz, now 45-18. The Jazz, however, are only 5-5 in their last 10 games. They lost their most recent game. LeBron has returned to the Los Angeles Lakers, so they have their 2 superstars back with Anthony Davis and LeBron James. In fact, last night, the Lakers, in LeBron's first game back, took on the Sacramento Kings, but lost by a final score of 110-106. However, LeBron, relatively decent performance after being off, over a month. 16 points, 32 minutes to go along with 8 rebounds and 7 assists for the King. Anthony Davis had 22 points in 34 minutes, also to go along with 11 rebounds. So, in terms of the Lakers' case, Logan, from what I see, it really seems like as long as those guys are on the floor, they're going to figure out how to play and get back in playoff shape.
I think that hits the nail, or hits the head off and whatever you want to say about it. I think LeBron James, after, like you said, being a month off, shooting 50% from the field, 16 points, 8 rebounds, and 7 assists, I think that's really consistent play. And if he can continue to improve off of that and continue to get his scoring numbers up, I think that'll be a huge step in the right direction for this Lakers team, who has definitely dropped.
And it's definitely going to be a big boost. You were talking about, Logan. I want to stay in that Pacific Division and talk about the Golden State Warriors, who've had a rough week. I was watching a little bit of their game against the Dallas Mavericks this past Tuesday, Logan, and I will have to tell you, it was not pretty at all. The Golden State Warriors went, what was it, about like 9, I'm sure you heard it as well, 9 minutes and 28 seconds something like that, without scoring a single point. That includes not even scoring, a free throw. The Dallas Mavericks were just toying with the Warriors. Golden State only had 29 points in the first half. So this led to a big topic of discussion for the week, Logan. Klay Thompson, do you think when he returns that he will that he can elevate the Warriors back to, Western Conference final status even? Because I just think the West is so much more tight now. Don't think there's any way the Warriors can get back to the finals. Maybe if they trade for a superstar, obviously anything's possible when you have those two shooters. But when you look at the West now, it's bigger, it's rougher, it's way more competitive, and I just don't see how, as great and elite as shooters as these two guys are, how that can overcome, the competitiveness of the Western Conference.
Well, I think that, and I've talked about this before, but I think Klay Thompson's impact on the game and the Warriors' offense as a whole, defensively and offensively, has been underrated since he's been out. And I think that people are finally understanding how important he was. You just take off that one guy. And this team is barely in a play-in. So I think that when Klay Thompson returns, if Klay Thompson is still Klay Thompson, I think they're probably a top 5 seed in the West. Now, I don't know if I would finals contenders, but I don't think that the shooters of Klay and Curry could run with the likes of LeBron and Anthony Davis or Kawhi and Paul George or any of those top dogs in the West. But I still think that this is going to be a top 5 team in the West when Klay Thompson returns.
Yeah. How do you feel about their supporting cast, though? Because we've talked about that before too. I just don't know if that supporting cast can get them over the hump, to get to something like the Western Conference Finals.
Well, to a degree, when you have two guys that can light it up offensively, like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson can, I don't necessarily know how great of a supporting cast you'll need. I think you've got Andrew Wiggins as a supporting cast. I think James Wiseman, when healthy, will be a very solid piece to that offense and the defense, obviously. But when Curry and Klay can get 60 combined each night, all you need is a 15, 20 from one other guy. And I think that the kind of group that they've got with them is going to be able to give them that. Yeah, and,
I really will love seeing Klay Thompson back. As you mentioned, Logan, very underrated player. He was a guy who had to you would probably say he sacrificed the most when Kevin Durant went to Golden State because Kevin Durant was a great ball handler, so it made Klay really just a spot up shooter the entire dynasty when Kevin Durant was there. So I'll be very interested to see how Klay Thompson fits in with this new look Warriors team and what they'll be able to do in the future. But Logan, I want to ask you this. So both from Eastern Conference and Western Conference, from what you've been seeing this last few days, in the East, who are your surprise teams and most disappointing teams? And then in the Western Conference, same thing. Who surprised you the most and who are you most disappointed by?
Well, in the Eastern Conference, obviously, when it comes to, you want to talk about surprises, the story's been New York Knicks. After not getting Durant and Kyrie and Zion, and they're still a 4 seed in the East. But for me, believe it or not, I'm going to go with the Atlanta Hawks. We talked about this team in the same breath as the Cleveland Cavaliers in the second week of the preseason.
Yeah.
And they're a 6 seed, or 5 seed now, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So this team, they really look at the numbers, the personnel on squad. They don't have that many guys. Trey played absolutely fantastic. I don't know how in the world he wasn't an all-star. He was clearly one of the biggest snubs in the East. But I think that he has taken this team to another level this year. John Collins has been a great help. Cam Reddish has also performed better than his rookie season. I think you've seen a lot of improvement there offensively.
Yeah.
But this team, I think that when it comes to young teams, young up-and-coming teams, this team is right up there with the New York Knicks and Julius Randle when it comes to development and growth because, this team is already making noise in the Eastern Conference before the playoffs have even started yet.
In terms of the Eastern Conference, Logan, who are you most disappointed by so far? Obviously, I know we're always disappointed by the Cavs, but another team you're thinking of?
I mean, the other probably team that I would consider pretty disappointing is the Toronto Raptors. Or even the Chicago Bulls, you can make the argument, but I'll stick with the Raptors because, I understand they lost Kawhi a couple years ago, but was in the Eastern semis last year, and they took Boston at 7 games.
Yeah.
Boston took Miami at 6. So it was a very tightly contested series, and now it's going to be in a play-in. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, there's no way.
So underperformed this year, and I find it really hard to believe that they could go. And the team isn't any different, really.
Yeah.
Besides the Norman Powell, Gary Trent trade, this team isn't much different aside from, like I said, that trade. I don't understand how they go from 7-game Eastern semis loss to 26-37.
Yeah.
Point in the season. So that's probably my biggest Eastern Conference disappointment.
Yeah, and, to me, with the Raptors, they were talking about, there were so many rumors, is Kyle Lowry going to be gone? But however, he has still stayed, still the leader of the franchise. Before we move on to the Western Conference real quick, Logan, I wanted to ask you about the Knicks, because, they were high on your list. Do you think that Kyrie and Kevin Durant will regret not signing with the Knicks? Because we know New York, it's a Knicks town. The Brooklyn Nets, are obviously a much better team. But when you talk about basketball in New York City, you're talking about the New York Knicks. And Stephen A. Smith was actually saying this on ESPN First Take. If the Knicks make the playoffs, which it looks like they will, that would be a bigger story in New York than if the Nets, made a deep playoff run and didn't win the championship. So, do you think, in general, Kyrie and KD will regret signing with the Nets and not the Knicks?
Well, I don't know if I would say 100% that they would regret it, because if you look at salary cap and all that hard cap stuff that goes on in the NBA, there's not exactly a high chance that the Knicks would have gotten James Harden. And I think that Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant would much rather have James Harden than be on a team like the Knicks. And don't get me wrong, clearly the Knicks have done just fine without them, but I don't know if I would say they would regret it. If the Nets win the championship, I don't think there's any doubt. I think they will win the championship. But if the Knicks can somehow find a way to get to the second round, I know Stephen A. said playoffs compared to not winning the chip. If the Knicks can find a way to get to the second round, I think that there would be a higher chance of them not being so happy with going to Brooklyn compared to New York.
It definitely seems that the Knicks are going to make the playoffs, so it'll be interesting to see. The Knicks really, if you think about it, are putting pressure on the Brooklyn Nets. This is kind of the first time we've really seen that rivalry in New York City between the Knicks and the Nets. It's finally taking shape. The Knicks and the Nets, the battle of the boroughs, and I'm so happy that that each of these two teams are putting pressure on one another to play well. Logan, our last topic of NBA basketball. Before we move to the Indians and everything with that. Last topic on NBA basketball, we're going to talk about Western Conference. So Western Conference, who's your most surprising team? Which team are you most disappointed by?
Well, with the West, there is a lot of teams that you can make the arguments for. I mean, wow, the Jazz, even, though they had Donovan Mitchell, they performed on another level. Thought they were going to do. But I think the easy pick here is the Phoenix Suns. We saw this team as a very solid team in the bubble, unable to make the playoffs despite an 8-0 run. But, they are the number 1 seed in the Western Conference for a reason, and this team has outworked every team that they've gone against. DeAndre Ayton has had a fantastic season. Devin Booker has proved to be one of the best guards in the NBA right now. Chris Paul, leader and absolute marksman offensively. But I think that's got to be my biggest surprise for the Western Conference is how well the Phoenix Suns have fared in the Southwest.
How do you feel about the Phoenix Suns' playoff chances? Because, Obviously Chris Paul is a winner and he's going to give it his all, but they have a lot of young talent, and the playoffs experience to me does matter. So when they go up against a team like the Clippers or the Lakers, or even a team like the Trailblazers with Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum and obviously Carmelo Anthony, how do you think the Phoenix Suns will fare against those more experienced teams of the Western Conference?
I honestly don't think they'll fare too poorly against those more experienced teams in the West, because we've seen this guy Devin Booker and what he can do on the offensive side of the ball. He's got ice water in his veins.
Yeah.
He can go to work. He can hit the shots that he's got to hit. Chris Paul, he's part of the Banana Boat crew. He's old, but he knows how to play basketball. Mm-hmm. He makes everybody around him better. And I just think that he is going to be a huge factor in what I think will honestly be a pretty deep playoff run for the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, I'm very excited, as it's going to be a battle, but for first place in the West. That is such an important seed to get this year. But right now, it's between the Phoenix Suns and the Utah Jazz. We will see who clinches it. So to recap, ladies and gentlemen, for the Cleveland Cavs, their upcoming schedule, today they'll be going up against the Miami Heat from Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. Tuesday, May 4th, the Phoenix Suns, who we just talked about, will be in town to take on the Cavs. And then the Cavs will conclude this homestand against Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, and the Portland Trailblazers on May 5th before they have a pair of games against the Dallas Mavericks. Now, Logan, that concludes our NBA basketball portion of the show today. Let's get into some Indians talk for a couple of minutes here. And Indians with a big win yesterday in Chicago, 5-3. Indians defeat the White Sox, and this was definitely a game the Indians were playing well in for the majority of it. After falling down 1-0 after the second inning, the Indians score 4 runs alone, Logan, in the third inning. 4-2 was the third inning score in favor of the Indians. The Indians then tack on another run in the 8th inning to give them this 5-3 victory. This now puts the Indians at 500 on the season. They're 12-12. Chicago White Sox now 14-11 on the season. This is a big win for the Indians, especially after being hammered by the Minnesota Twins this past Wednesday, 10-2. That's especially on the road, Logan. After getting beat up at home by Minnesota, then you go on the road to Chicago, take care of business. That definitely has to feel good as an Indians fan. So how do you feel about the Indians this week? Because they've won the majority of their games this week. The only loss they had since this past Sunday was that 10-2 drubbing on Wednesday at the hands of the Minnesota Twins. So are you feeling more confident about this Indians team?
Yeah, I think from the pitching standpoint, when we talked about inconsistency with the starters and how they haven't been going 6-7 innings like they really should be if they want to win baseball games, I think Shane Bieber did a fantastic job against those White Sox. I believe it was the White Sox last night. It was, and he went 7 innings, 11 strikeouts, and I think that the biggest thing that mattered to me was following that third inning where they did have 2 runs. They didn't score. They didn't get another guy across the plate. I think the fact that he was able not only to go those 7 innings, but go the 4-inning stretch. Even though the Indians' bats weren't working, they weren't getting guys across either. That one hot inning just propelled them forward, and he didn't give up much after that third inning. Yeah,
and also, Logan, Indians, they're, as I mentioned, they're 12-12 now. They're third in the American League Central Division. Chicago is their second place, 14-11. Indians are only 1.5 games behind second place. Do you think, Logan, that the Indians can catch up to Chicago and maybe get that second place? Because to me, it looks like the Royals are going to be winning the American League Central. So to me, the question is, who's going to get that second spot? Is it going to be the Indians or is it going to be Chicago? Do you think the Indians can take that second place spot in the Central Division?
I do. I think that Chicago has been just nearly as inconsistent as Cleveland has been offensively when it comes to the bats, but I think it's just going to be a matter of who takes the right wins. There's a lot of games left in the season, but I think that the Indians do have a solid chance at taking that number 2 spot. I think Kansas City, as mentioned, is kind of running away with that number 1 spot in the AL Central. But I think that second spot is up for grabs just for either of those two teams.
Yeah, and also, Logan, I'll ask you this question, too. Teams you're most... Let's look at the American League first. Which teams are you most impressed by in the American League? You were talking about Boston a couple weeks ago. They're 17-10. Who's the most impressive to you so far? Who's the most disappointing? Because, Yankees are only 12-14. I was expecting a lot more from them. So your thoughts on the American League?
Well, you just mentioned how I talked about Boston a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to talk about Boston again. This team, after losing Mookie Betts, I can tell you as much. I didn't expect much out of them. I don't think anybody really expected much out of them. But this team is 17-10, and they're an AL leader.
Yeah.
So I think that they have way exceeded expectations so far this season. And I've been pleasantly impressed with how hot the bats have been. And then the other team that you could really argue with is the Chicago White Sox. I know, we just talked about the AL Central and how they've been inconsistent, but they're still right there with the Kansas City Royals, who continue to lead the AL Central. But
right.
The White Sox have still had a good year at 14-11. They can keep going. They've won 7 of their last 10, and I think that they've been pretty inconsistent. But like I said, I think this team's got a chance to also try to take control of the AL Central.
Who are you most disappointed by in the American League so far? I mean, the Yankees, to me, they'd probably be on my list. But any other thoughts you might have?
Yeah, the Yankees. I mean, the Rays are also another team that have been pretty disappointing. When we talked about before on MLB opening day, I know we talked about the Rays being one of those teams that could really make moves and could be one of the best teams in the MLB come postseason, but they have really underperformed at only 13-14 so far this season. They have not played well. And then, you mentioned the Yankees, same story there. The Twins, you can make the argument with. It's a lot of disappointing teams that you really expected to be top contenders in the MLB.
Yeah, and, the same story can be said for the National League as well, Logan. Right now, the National League leaders in each division in the NL East, Phillies, they're at 13-13, so their .500 record has got them first place in the NL East. Milwaukee Brewers are 16-10, 7-3 in their last 10 games. They lead the National League Central Division, and then the NL West, the San Francisco Giants, they're 16-10. Followed by the second place LA Dodgers. The defending champions are only second in the NL West, but they're 3-7 in their last 10. Logan, they've really been struggling. So, who do you in the National League? Who do you think has been the most surprising and then the most disappointing in the National League as well? Because in terms of most disappointing, I would have to say the Dodgers, just how they've been playing in their last 10 games.
Yeah, I mean, after the hot start that the Dodgers had, I think they were 14-2 at one point.
Right.
They were ridiculous, but they lost 7 of their last 10, and that is just not where they need to be with Cody Bellinger, Mookie Betts. They're just loaded from top to bottom. Clayton Kershaw. They have so many guys that can work for that team, pitching, batting. It doesn't even matter. Like I said, they're just loaded from top to bottom. So that could be an argument for most disappointing, but I think you could also make an argument for the Atlanta Braves. Having one of the hottest bats in baseball with Ronald Acuna Jr., you've got a lot of guys who can hit. Pablo Sandoval is also there, and he's hitting 300 on the year. Their pitching has been not up to par this year. It hasn't been the past couple years, but this team's got a lot of hot bats. I don't know why they are 12-14 and 7th in the NL. But they're struggling right now, and that's another really disappointing team for me. Yeah,
so, Logan, last topic of baseball here. Most surprising team to you in the National League? Because, Pittsburgh Pirates have been irrelevant forever, but, hey, they're 6-4 in their last 10 games. Obviously, the Milwaukee Brewers and San Francisco Giants are playing well. The Philadelphia Phillies, even though they're, 13-13, they're still leading the NL East. So, your thoughts on the most surprising team in the National League thus far?
I mean, the Giants, honestly. I mean, the Giants, Evan Longoria is there now. I think that Brandon Crawford's not been playing super well, but they're still 16-10 and one of the top teams in the NL. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that they were one of the teams that was heavily talked about early. Like I said earlier, we talked a lot about the Rays, the Yankees, we talked about the Dodgers. Again, we talked about the Braves a little bit, but nobody was talking about the San Francisco Giants. But this team has played very well in the NL. As I already mentioned, 16-10. They've won their 6-4 in their last 10, and they played really well considering that nobody was really having it.
Yeah, exactly, Logan. I'm very excited. San Francisco, I'm very excited about San Francisco because this is a team who are 10-3 at home, but they need to clean up that road record a little bit. They're 6-7 on the road, but if this team can stay up to par with the Dodgers, hey, you never know who can maybe get that National League crown. But let's get back to the Indians. We'll look at their schedule a little bit here. Indians will have Game 2 of 3 against the Chicago White Sox. That'll be today at 4:05 p.m. Indians then, as I mentioned, Game 3 of their matchup with the White Sox will be tomorrow at 2:10 p.m. Indians will then head to Kansas City for 4 straight games against the Royals. That'll be a great test for the Indians. And then Cleveland will return home for homestands against both the Cincinnati Reds and the Chicago Cubs before heading back out on the road to Seattle for matchups with the Mariners. So in these next few games, Logan, these final 2 games with the White Sox, and then on this 4-game series with the Royals in Kansas City, what do you want to see most from the Indians?
Well, when it comes to the record, I need to see a sweep of the White Sox. It's going to be their best chance to truly take control of that second seed in the AL Central. But I'd also like to see at least 2 of 4 taken against Kansas City. And I know that's a lot to ask of a team that's 15-9 and, again, one of the hottest bats in the MLB right now. But I think from the pitching group, the White Sox lead the MLB in batting average and on base percentage.
Yeah.
The Indians did a great job of neutralizing them offensively yesterday, but they've got to continue to do that in these next couple games because that's going to be their best chance to take control of the series and sweep them.
Absolutely. This is going to be I'm really excited for this 4-game series the Indians are going to have against the Royals. And like you said, Logan, these next 2 games against Chicago are imperative as well, especially if the Indians want to get that second seed and possibly aspire to get that first seed in the AL Central with those games against Kansas City. But now, Logan, it's time to put baseball back in the dugout, and this is probably the section we were looking forward to the most because it's right here in Cleveland. It's been going on for the last couple of days, and it's been awesome, Logan. I've been watching it. I watched the first round last night, the 2021 NFL Draft. I got to tell you, from what I saw on TV, Logan, they did a great job. Before we get into all the draft picks and everything, just in terms of the ambiance of it, I think they did a great job for the coronavirus. The fully vaccinated fans were a lot closer to the stage. I thought it was funny how Roger Goodell had the chair he used in last year's draft and brought that onto the stage. But for the pandemic and what's been going on, I don't know about you. I'll see what you think. But I thought it was very put together very well.
Yeah. Remarks back, I think the NFL did a fantastic job of including fans and making it interactive for everybody. I think the picks were a lot to talk about, and I'm excited to get into that, but I think that they did a fantastic job of putting it all together and keeping everybody safe, and the whole vaccination rule, I think that was a great input of making sure that people don't get sick. Yeah, and I'm super it was awesome, really. It was super enthralling to see right there lakeside, that huge amphitheater, and right there on the lakeside with the NFL draft. It was certainly a very awesome event to watch on television. But now, Logan, let's get into those draft picks. I want to talk about specifically the Browns here for a little bit. So Browns, their draft picks specifically, round 1, they choose Greg Newsome III out of Northwestern. In the second round, with associations with Chicago and Carolina, the Browns end up with Jeremiah Owusu-Karamoah, who is a linebacker, and then they draft wide receiver Anthony Schwartz out of Auburn in the third round with the 91st pick. So, Logan, obviously, Greg Newsome II, that's big news for the Browns, and they draft a linebacker as well. Browns definitely are trying to go for some defense here in this draft. So your thoughts on these Browns draft picks and what they can amount up to in Cleveland? Well, I think the pick of Greg Newsome, I'm going to break it down by pick, but I think the pick of Greg Newsome was absolutely perfect for what the Browns needed. I know he talks from defensively, kind of stupid. Necessarily. I think in this particular situation, I think I would have been perfectly content if they had decided to go Gregory Rosie out.
Yeah.
Well, and I think he was one of the most underrated edges in the class from Miami. I think he is just going to be an absolute stud playing for that Buffalo D-line. But I love Greg Newsome. I think he's one of the top corners in the class. I think he's one of the most versatile corners, and I think that the Browns definitely did a man-to-man corner. Phil Ward has played very well, but he hasn't played. He's hurt, and last year, Greedy Williams barely played. Like, he's played like 4 games all his career in Cleveland, which may be exaggerating, but I'm really not. He doesn't play much, and when he's out there, he doesn't make a huge impact. I think Greg Newsome might be that guy that can finally be that second corner.
Right. Right. And how do you feel about how do you feel about Anthony Schwartz as well, the wide receiver out of Auburn?
I think that it kind of gives the Browns a little bit of cushion to maybe give an option to possibly moving on from Odell Beckham Jr. And I know that sounds a bit out there, but if you think about it, it makes sense. Anthony Schwartz is one of those guys. He is built very similar to Odell Beckham Jr. He's very much a route runner, and he's very good at moving out after the catch. So, and that's Odell Beckham's job. He didn't do it last year. I know it was a season and he got hurt, but they move on Odell Beckham Jr. and this would honestly give him the depth to do so.
But I feel also, that Baker Mayfield's improved as a quarterback, and we saw that growth throughout the course of last season. But so do you think that Baker Mayfield's growth can also, benefit Odell Beckham if he does stay in Cleveland?
Definitely. I think that Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham Jr.'s connection would grow a little bit, but I also think that Odell Beckham Jr.'s play last year, even when Baker gave him decent throws, I just saw him at Butterfingers. He could not hold on to the ball for anything. I mean, there were balls that would hit him in the helmet. I don't know if it was his focus or just a matter of him not being there.
Yeah.
We talked about it with Kevin Love, and that's kind of what I'm noticing from him last year. But to me, it was a matter of depth because, if you move Odell Beckham Jr. last year, let's assume they didn't get Anthony Schwartz, now you've got, I think, literally 3 receivers. 4. You have 4 receivers, but this is a team that likes to run a lot of receiver sets. So I think that it's going to give him a chance to kind of just relax a little bit and be like, okay, now we have a little bit of playing cards to deal. So I definitely like to pick up, and it's going to add to the depth of the wide receiver for.
And the Jacksonville Jaguars also, Logan, have a lot to celebrate in these next coming days with what happened in the NFL draft for them. Obviously, they had the first pick, and I think everyone and their grandma knew that Trevor Lawrence was going to be the first pick of the NFL draft. Logan, let's start with, these top picks. Trevor Lawrence and Urban Meyer, I'm really excited to see how that all works out. So if we go in order of the top picks, so Trevor Lawrence goes to Jacksonville. Zach Wilson, another quarterback, will be going to the Jets and will be looking to turn that franchise around. Trey Lance is going to be on the San Francisco 49ers. The Atlanta Falcons take Kyle Pitts out of Florida. Jamar Chase will be the wide receiver going from LSU. He'll be going to the Bengals. So those are the top 5 picks in this year's NFL draft. And I actually want to start with Jamar Chase here, Logan, and then we'll work our way to Lawrence and Wilson. But Jamar Chase, my eyebrows were raised a little bit after this pick because the Cincinnati Bengals, to me, what they needed was protection for Joe Burrow. And, I didn't think seeing a wide receiver was the best option for them. So how do you feel about this 5th pick of the Bengals? Because I felt like they really needed to draft someone to protect the pocket for Joe Burrow, but that's not the route they were going.
Yeah, no, I'll say this. I'm going to say this before I begin to analyze the particular pick by the Bengals of Jamar Chase, but there were probably 3 picks in the first 5 that I was just like, stupid. Why?
Yeah.
Like, that's just, I don't understand. And I'll start, again, with Jamar Chase. He's literally, and I've told 5 or 6 people this already, he's going to look like Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. I mean, and my buddy was like, well, Jamar Chase is the best receiver in the class. He's got a chance to be really good. And I'm like, well, if your number one quarterback tears his ACL in every second week of the season, then you're not going to have anybody throwing to him. I mean, don't get me wrong, Jeff Driscoll's great and all, but he ain't Joe Burrow. So I think that they should have gone Penei Sewell, and I think that the Lions got an absolute steal at 7, and he is going to be an absolute beast in 2 to 3 years.
And
not making an immediate impact on that team.
What were you were saying that you were disappointed in a lot of these first couple of picks here, Logan. What were some of those other ones that had you raising your eyebrows a bit?
Well, believe it or not, I think Zach Wilson to the Jets was kind of a stupid pick also. Let's be honest here. The Jets haven't had any quarterback luck in, I don't know, since Joe Namath.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Who was the last quarterback that you remember the Jets having to be able to throw? Was Geno Smith maybe? Buck fumble? I mean, come on. Let's be honest here.
Right.
Zach Wilson, I mean, I know he played BYU. I've seen some of the highlights, and I think he's going to be solid. But, I mean, good Lord, the Bears, again, with a steal. They got Justin Fields, who's, in my opinion, the second-best quarterback in the class. They got him at 11.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I just don't get it. I don't understand. The Broncos going on 13, and I understand he's a great corner, but you pass on the second-best quarterback in – I mean, this is one of the best quarterback classes that we've seen in years. I mean, and then the other one that I almost turned off the TV. I was like, yeah, I'm done watching. Let me break this down for you.
Wait, I'm sorry. You kind of broke out a little bit there. Who was it, Logan? I apologize.
Trey Lance at
okay.
3 was the one where I nearly turned off the TV because they traded 2 second-round picks and their 6th to go to number 3 to draft a guy that they genuinely could have drafted at 15, honestly. Realistically speaking, he might have dropped to 15. And they traded up to get him. He played FCS. It wasn't like this dude went and played, the North Carolina football or something like that. He played FCS. He's on the B team.
Yeah.
Let me tell you this. In 6 to 7 weeks into the season, if this guy is one of the top rookies in the NFL, I'll eat my own words and I'll admit it. But good Lord, I just don't understand.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I was thinking Trey Lance was maybe gonna fall maybe around 5 to 8. I was expecting San Francisco to go with Justin Fields at this pick, but like you said, the Chicago Bears got a steal, and we all know that the Chicago Bears and quarterbacks have not had the greatest relationship. So it's going to be really interesting to see what Justin Fields can do in the Windy City. I want to talk about this too, Logan. Mac Jones out of Alabama goes to the Patriots. This to me is a really big move. Is this possibly Tom Brady's successor? Or, I mean, now you have Cam Newton, you have Mac Jones. How do you feel about the Patriots now with this Mac Jones draft?
Well, I think I would sound pretty stupid to say that Mac Jones is Tom Brady's successor. I mean, you look at him from intangibles wise, he's basically the same exact person. But, I mean, I could play quarterback for that Alabama team, honestly. You're talking about mini Derrick Henry, 6'3", 280. He's a bowling ball coming at you. You've got the Heisman-winning wide receiver. You've got one of the best receivers in the country in Jalen Waddle, who was hurt for half the season, but he still had him for 9 weeks. I could have played quarterback for that team under Nick Saban as well. I mean, I think it's an okay pick, but it's not what they needed. Because let's be honest, if they drafted Mac Jones to go 9-7 again, because that's what they're going to do. This defense is formidable. They have no weapons. They've lost their best offensive lineman to the Kansas City Chiefs, mind you. That Kansas City Chiefs team is looking 10 times as dangerous as they already did.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this Patriots team drafted a guy to go 8-8, 9-7 again. And honestly, let's look at it like this. That is the worst place to be in any sport. Because that way, you're not going to make any noise in the playoffs, and you're not getting a top pick to rebuild.
Right.
So they're in the worst possible position because clearly this team isn't going to compete with the likes of, let's be honest, Cleveland at this point, and they're not going to be one of the worst teams, I don't think. So I don't know if I like the pick. I think they should have gone with someone just more probably defensively or even a wide receiver, honestly. I know this wasn't super deep wide receiver class. It was very top-heavy, but I just think they should have gone somewhere where they would have gotten a weapon offensively instead of Mac Jones.
And last, but certainly not least, Logan, I want to talk about this for a little bit. The Pittsburgh Steelers with the 24th pick, they choose Najee Harris out of Alabama. running back. How do you feel this addition of Najee Harris is going to help the Steelers' run game? Because we know these last few years, Steelers have been one of the worst teams running the football. So how do you feel about Pittsburgh with this draft choice of Najee Harris?
I actually love the pick of Najee Harris going to Pittsburgh. I think that he is going to take the Pittsburgh running game to a level that it hasn't seen before. I know I already talked about how anybody could have played for that Bama team, but the running game's different. The running game, it's you and 5 other guys. The receivers aren't great blockers, and I know some of them can be, but, Najee Harris is mini Derrick Henry. He's got speed. He's got physicality. He's a big dude. But I think a lot of credit has to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think they hit it perfectly. They did exactly, and they filled the need that they had to fill. And
certainly, Logan, I'm excited to see Najee Harris in Steeler Nation, what he does for that squad. So that concludes NFL draft talk, but I want to talk about one more topic in the NFL that has really been getting people's attention. Let's talk about this, Logan. Aaron Rodgers has openly stated that he does not want to return to play for the Green Bay Packers. Now, do you think that these comments by Rodgers, do you think they're valid comments? Do you think he should return to the team? What's overall your perspective on this? Because it seems like the Packers have really just disregarded Rodgers and what he's wanted in order to build success for the team. Only one Super Bowl in his time there. So your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers voicing his displeasure with the Packers?
Well, I 100% agree with Aaron Rodgers voicing his displeasure. The guy in the NFL and Green Bay, he's one of those guys where you'll walk around, everybody loves him. I've seen people in Cleveland wearing Aaron Rodgers jerseys because everybody loves this guy, and I think he's 100% correct to voice his opinion. I think that the Packers should have treated him better. Drafting Jordan Love is like a slap across the face for one of the best quarterbacks that this NFL has ever seen. He is easily, in my eyes, the most talented quarterback to ever touch football in the NFL. And I think anybody else would tell you the exact same thing because he is just on another level. So I 100% agree with Aaron Rodgers voicing his opinions. And I think it would be a disservice to not only themselves, but also to Aaron Rodgers to not move him.
Where do you think Aaron Rodgers could end up?
I have actually heard a lot of people talking about the Broncos. And I was like, you know what, there's no way. But apparently, I've heard that they've made that Patrick Surtain pick in order to make a trade for Aaron Rodgers. And to me, that would be a very interesting, but kind of another backstabbing move. Because let's be honest, there's no way anybody wants to go to Denver. It's kind of like the Cavs. Unless you're born there, or they're offering you, $100 million a year. You don't want to go. Nobody's coming to Cleveland in free agency. It's not like it's New York or a big market. So to me, Aaron Rodgers going to the Broncos would be a stab in the back, but I think it's probably the most likely move out of all of them.
Very intrigued to see what's going to go on with all this Aaron Rodgers drama these next couple of weeks. But Logan, the great analysis on the draft. I'm so excited that it was in Cleveland this year, and they, as I mentioned, they did a phenomenal job. Putting all this together and making sure that everyone was COVID safe. And Logan, that concludes our episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. I really appreciate you staying on with me for a little longer today. Great analysis on everything today, especially with that NFL draft. It was so awesome to talk about it with you because I watched, that first round and I had a lot of opinions forming. So I was so happy to talk about that with you. Have a terrific rest of your weekend, Logan. I really appreciate your time, and I'll see you for our next episode.
Thank you. Appreciate you for having me.
Of course, anytime. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our latest episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Special thanks once again to Logan Purcell. Such a phenomenal job with his analysis. Now, you're probably wondering, Darius, that was the best episode of a podcast I've ever listened to. I need more of that, wherever that came from, please. Just like, chocolate chip cookies or something like that, or even Oreos. Well, guess what? I have a whole collection of my podcast episodes on NordoniaHills.News. If you go to NordoniaHills.News, go to the Contributors tab, you'll find my name. It's spelled Darayyussethna, Darius Sethna. Click on my name, and then from there you'll be able to see my entire page of work on NordoniaHills.News. You'll see all my episodes of the Cleveland Sports Show podcast. You will also see some articles I've been posting. I've posted a couple articles these last few months about the Cavs. I had a trip to Atlanta, talked about the Atlanta Hawks. And I also, if you keep scrolling, you will be able to see basketball broadcasts of Nordonia Boys basketball, play-by-play I did with some other media students of NordoniaHills.News. So make sure you check those out as well, because Nordonia had a terrific boys basketball team this year, so you're not going to want to miss out on that. Also, you can find all of my work on my Twitter page. If you're on Twitter, just type in my Twitter handle at Nordonia Sports, or you can type in my name, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA. Once you do that, click on my name. You'll be able to view my entire Twitter profile. You'll see all my episodes for the podcast are posted on there, as well as my other work, the links to the articles, links to the broadcast. You'll be able to see it all right from the comfort of your Twitter page. Now, also, I'm very happy to say that the Cleveland Sports Show is on the NordoniaHills.News YouTube page. So if you're on YouTube and you need some Cleveland sports to make your day a little bit better, guess what? Just head on to the NordoniaHills.News YouTube page, and all of my episodes for the Cleveland Sports Show will be on there as well. And I'm very happy to also announce that you can take the Cleveland Sports Show with you, no matter where you are. If you're up in the draft in Cleveland, you're here in the Nordonia area, wherever you are, you can take the Cleveland Sports Show with you on Spotify. That's right. If you're on Spotify, just type in my name, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA, and you will be able to access all of my episodes to the Cleveland Sports Show right there on the go, ready for you to listen to get your Cleveland sports cravings. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my episode of the Cleveland Sports Show, our latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Once again, special thanks to Logan Purcell for doing such a terrific analysis. So excited to talk about this NFL draft with him. We'll see you for our next episode. Until then, have a terrific rest of your weekend, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great day, whatever day it is you're listening to this, and we'll see you for our next episode. Take care.